So, Nick, this is our 10th series, and we've been doing this for a whole year. That is crazy.
Crazier than seeing dead people?
That's oddly specific.
Look, Kylie, just roll charisma to convince the audience that they're appreciated by us.
That's a nat 20, baby! Okay, so Nick and I wanted to give a huge thank you to our audience that has grown with us this past year. This whole project was derived from our crazy conversations that we have off the air, and we wanted to bring other people into that conversation. So, that being said...
There's no better way to say it than with free gifts.
That is right. We are hosting our very first giveaway. We collected a couple of beautiful horror pieces from films such as Halloween and Coraline and Us. And of course, we have a sticker as well from the Sugar Mint Gallery in Pasadena, California, that we are giving all these goodies away to one lucky winner.
All right, so Kylie, so I'm pretty sure our audience is wondering then, how do they enter for this giveaway?
So our giveaway is point-based. So check out the giveaway link below in the description. Every platform that you are subscribed to earns you a certain number of points. The more points that you have, the more likely that you are to win. There's even an option to submit daily for points.
So how long do our audiences have?
Our giveaway winner is going to be announced during the first episode of our next series on April 26th, which means you have a whole month to submit for points.
So better not just sit on your hands the whole time, you know? That month's gonna come right around.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
With that being said, good luck everyone, and here's to another year of the show. Whee! Hello everyone, and welcome back to Survive This Crit. Today we have the pleasure of killing time with Joshua Olsen. Joshua is a growing horror fan, partially due to his wife, Kylie, making him watch horror movies with Kylie, but he's also a Marine Corps veteran, a force to be reckoned with in the security field, and a friend / lover to the podcast. But he's also a huge fan of RPGs and has some supernatural experiences of his own. So please welcome the Ed to Kylie's Lorraine, Joshua.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand that reference.
It's from the movie we watched together, The Conjuring. Ed and Lorraine they're the two main characters. They're the husband and wife.
Okay. I didn't know that those were their names.
Oh, well.
So now this whole interview is going to turn into, we're going to determine for ourselves, did Josh actually watch this movie?
Oh, I definitely watched the movie. I just don't remember character names ever.
Oh, white guy with hair. That
the dude that wasn't a priest but acted like one.
Yes, dude like priest but not priest. That was the job description for Patrick Olsen.
His wife, who was like supernaturally gifted.
Yes, supernatural girl. That was also the job description.
So that was Ed and Lorraine.
Yeah,
cool.
Ed and Lorraine Warren, both real life people.
Real life people.
So see, I watched the movie. I'm not good with the character names.
Well, let us head down a journey, Joshua. We ask you the hard-hitting questions of horror journalism. What was the first horror movie that you remember seeing, and did it traumatize you?
So the first horror movie that I saw was Alien with my father. And I gotta say, it was more exciting than anything else because it was actually my first R-rated movie.
Ooh. Was it like the RPG we did for Scream a while ago, where your dad kept showing people horror movies?
I'm gonna be honest here. It was nothing like that.
You didn't pause the screen and be like, "Look at that detail on the alien."
I think you're thinking my dad, because my dad definitely does that whenever we watch movies with him.
That's true.
You're right. Maybe I had the personas of your two dads all mixed together.
Joshua, what about Alien stood out to you? Was it like how thrilling it was because there was more gore than you were used to, or was it the actual plot itself?
So the excitement was from just being a kid and watching an R-rated movie for the first time. Because as kids, you're like, oh my gosh, I watched an R-rated movie. You tell that to your friends, and they're all like, oh yeah, well, I watched this R-rated movie, and so I was able to do that. That's why it was so exciting. But aside from that, I do recall being extremely grossed out by the alien jumping out of the dude's chest. But it's such an iconic scene that, like, as I look back on it now, it's just really impressive art for, when it was created, because there's no graphics added or anything like that.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. What is your least favorite horror movie and why?
Least favorite. Can I say I don't have a least favorite horror movie?
Do you have a least favorite like trope then, or like storytelling that happens in a lot of horror movies that you don't like? You don't like it, a specific movie?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I have a trope that I despise. Whenever a character is running away from a villain and they're like grabbing things and throwing them at the villain, but like the things that they're grabbing are like, a 2-pound lamp or a vase of flowers, and like, sure, glass would hurt, but you're fighting a villain. You can't just throw a vase. You got to throw something that actually has a blade or something like that. Yeah.
They should throw the table that's underneath the vase, is what you're saying.
There's no such thing as a fair fight. And so when people are fighting back, but they're like half-ass fighting back, really gets on my nerves.
Mm-hmm.
That was very spoken like a true Lorraine. And it makes sense though, because like having something that you could actually use in a fight is key.
Imagine if there was like a gun and the person accidentally threw the gun at the first.
I see that happening in another like rendition of Scary Movie. Like the girl's running away and she sees a gun, but she just throws it at the villain instead of actually just pew-pewing him.
Yeah. So then, okay, so that gives me a bit of between that and the RPG we did a couple months ago, I'm getting a little sense here for what your answer is going to be for this next question, Josh. But are you a fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn when it comes to the dangerous situations?
So I'm not going to act the same to every single situation, because if there's a dude that's twice my size, I'm probably not going to choose to fight that dude. But if there's a smart way to fight the dude and there are tools, at my disposal, then maybe it's worth it. Especially if those tools are actually weapons.
Yeah. Would there ever be a reason to freeze?
If you're hiding, then sure. It's just like an active shooter scenario, run, hide, fight. You're gonna first try to run away, because in real life, when someone's coming at you with a weapon, the best thing you can do is run away. If you're gonna fight them and especially if you don't have a weapon, you're not gonna win. But your next best bet, if you can't run, is to hide, because if there's a maniac on the loose and they're trying to take people out, and you don't have the ability to run, then the next best bet is to hide, and hope that they just don't find you. But the last option is always to fight, because that means that you don't have any other options. It's your last resort. It always should be in a self-defense type situation. Yeah, and for the sake of the horror movie tropes of like, oh my gosh, there's this villain, like if I'm up against a villain of some sort, like whether they're supernatural or not, at that point, I think you don't really have any other option but to fight. So how do you fight? You just gotta use the weapons at your disposal.
Well, so if you were in the Conjuring house, then how would you fight off the witch and the evil spirits in the house?
with prayer.
There we go. Fighting with your words.
Ooh, I like it. But would you ever see a logical reason to fawn then? Because we always put that up as an option for other guests.
Probably not, but let me hear your let me hear an example from you of how you would fawn in a situation first.
You want to hear an example from me? Okay. Personally, I'm not a fawn. I don't see any reason to fawn, but for the sake of argument, ready? Okay. I a person's coming to kill me, and and I can't run, I can't hide, I see no other choice. So sorry, I started thinking of a scene from Blue Mountain State. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but
I have seen that show.
okay, so Josh will get this, but probably cut this for the podcast.
Okay.
All right.
But you got that one strategy the mascot guy always has, which is if you're in a fight with someone, you look them up and down, stare them right in the face, and go, "Want me to you off?" That would be a fun, I guess.
But you have to
If I-
say it seductively, not aggressively. So Nick, give us your best seduction right here.
Okay. Hey, looking for a good time? I could, you know.
There you go.
Okay, I could see myself in a scenario where I try to fawn in order to evade, uh, you know, death, right? So
Yeah. Personally, it's the most to me, if it goes the way I was just describing, it's the most degrading, but you know what, if I guess if you survive,
so maybe the scenario is it's you versus this villain. You're in a room alone, and they think that they can gain your trust and love. And so you pretend like, okay, I caught on. This villain wants me to fawn over them. Like I'm gonna use that to my advantage and pretend to fawn over them so that I can you know, sneak away without being caught because they then trust me with misplaced trust.
Gotcha. Okay. So trying to persuade them.
Mm.
Stroke their ego, if
Manipulate.
you will.
It really just depends on the scenario. I've seen myself do all of the above when it comes to fight, flight, or freeze or fawn, but sometimes it's more effective in different situations, and you just gotta get used to like trusting your senses and your gut and like what is the best reaction to each scenario, and that changes, and you're not always gonna get it right.
I
Okay.
think your breakdown leads to a great opportunity to briefly, in as many words as you're comfortable sharing, a little bit about what you do, because you know a lot more about safety, I would say, than the average person.
Sure. So I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. And then after getting out, I started working in the security industry, which makes sense because I also did a little bit of time with security forces in the Marine Corps. So with all of this security experience in mind, my focus tends to go to like how do I react to a situation? Because everything is either reactive to the unexpected or how do I prepare for the worst case scenarios? And also, are those worst case scenarios even realistic? Because I can always say the worst case scenario is an atomic bomb lands on our heads tomorrow, but that's
Mhm.
not necessarily realistic. So, how do I react to each of these scenarios, and what's the best approach in those reactions?
Okay. So then kind of to help kind of de-blur the line a bit more, how do you make that decision of whether or not something is a realistic scenario or not? Say like you have two scenarios that,
Well,
are
you need a baseline.
yeah.
So I go to the same locations every day and work out of those locations. And so I have a baseline of those locations. I understand what is typical. and I can recognize what's abnormal. So when something changes in my baseline, then I have red flags in the back of my mind that alert me to those situations, because I'm just used to seeing weird scenarios, and then I'm also used to addressing those scenarios in a strategic manner.
For anyone who would say like their strength is not being able to address like strategic scenarios, or to be able to process and break down things and decisions the way that you just did, do you have like a favorite book or a resource, like a podcast or something that you would recommend where people can learn that skill? Or how would you learn that skill?
So I think that skill in particular comes from experience. It's just being in the type of situation that requires it all the time. Some people don't ever catch on to what is going on around them. I've seen Marines with 20 years experience who are oblivious as all hell, but that's because they're just not capable of seeing what's around them, or they choose not to. I don't know. I won't speak for them.
Well, if we were trying to like secure a home against dark spirits, as if we were in the Conjuring universe, you notice that there's red flags in a house that you enter, what would be your strategy in a real world like situation? Because Conjuring's based on a true story.
Well, if my red flags are up and I recognize that I'm not safe, I'm going for the closest thing to me that will make me safe. If that's prayer, at the absolute closest, because I don't have to move or do anything to pray, then that's what I'm going to do. If I have a Bible at my right hand, or in my hip pocket or something like that, maybe start reading scripture to push the evil entities out of the house. But in the movie, it was a very back and forth type of fight between Ed and Lorraine, and the evil spirit, because that's how the script was or that's how like the narrative was played out and written. It was supposed to be like a back and forth. So my perspective would be, going into a situation like that, is how do I get the upper hand? How do I make sure that I have all the moves, and that I'm not allotting my enemy to have like any opportunities to attack? So I'm already exposed because I'm on their stomping grounds, right?
Yeah.
This isn't where I reside, so I need to find my foothold. And if that foothold is spiritually, like prayer and reading the scripture, then that's what that looks like. But otherwise, it never hurts to have more people with you. There's always power in numbers. So if I have a chance to leave and come back with more people who can fight this thing with me, then that's what I'm gonna do.
Power in numbers.
Yeah.
That reminds me of what was it? Back at this house I was living with some roommates. One roommate and I, we had both just we just came back from watching a scary movie. I believe it was Doctor Sleep, and we had a serious discussion. We were like, do we think our house is haunted? Because I would hear some weird sounds at night sometimes, and honestly, it just the whole place seemed kind of like there was a negative sense to it. Like, I don't know, I heard like stuff about the previous owner, and it seemed like she was in a not like anything like bad about the previous owner, but just it seemed like bad stuff was happening to her. Not that I really want to get into anything specific. I started to notice a little bit of a trend. And between that and you could just chalk it up to too many horror movies, or just, being trying not to be too oblivious. My friend and I, or my roommate and I, and then the rest of us, we all got together and we are like, okay, let's go room to room. And this was our strategy, was to pray over in each room, to try and just, let God's blessings come in. And we figured like that would be good enough to kind of help bless the whole house in a sense. Yeah, you're talking earlier about red flags. What do you think what would you consider to be some good examples of some red flags?
In the spiritual realm, you mean
Yeah, in the
specifically?
spiritual realm.
Well, I forget who I'm quoting, but there's a famous quote states something along the lines of "We are spiritual beings with human bodies." So I see reality as more spiritual than anything else. So everything around us has a spiritual connectivity, so to speak. And I think, whatever you believe in, it's impossible to disprove the supernatural, that which occurs around us, which is outside of logic or science, right?
Hmm.
So, when it comes to supernatural occurrences around us, sometimes we don't recognize that they're supernatural. Sometimes we just see them as something odd or an anomaly. But I've had the hairs on my neck stand from situations that don't necessarily warrant immediate action, but I treated it as such, and maybe because of that, it saved my life. So, I was out camping with some friends when I was like 18, and the hairs on my neck stood, and I was like, "Hey guys, I think we need to get out of here." And they said, "Okay." And so we left. And as soon as we got everything packed up, it started raining, and then thunder came in, and there was like heavy downpour and lightning striking around us. So, maybe it's just some weird like coincidence, but that's that's me learning to trust my gut, and I've been doing that ever since.
Hmm.
So you've had some paranormal experiences of your own. Is that where you kind of fine-tuned some of that? Can you maybe give an example of some of the experiences that you've had?
Sure. So I have had sleep paralysis on and off. Not I wouldn't say like weekly or even monthly, but sometimes it's frequent, and that's never fun. But it's always something that I recognize as spiritual, because um, you know when it definitely doesn't feel natural laying in your bed wide awake, but not being able to move. And so whenever I experience that, I begin to pray, and then it goes away. So uh, I chalk that up as a spiritual attack. And it makes sense that if prayer makes it go away, then the solution is right there.
Have you seen any sort of apparitions before or anything that has come to you that it creates like because in the Conjuring, eventually it does take the shape of a human form. So have you seen anything that would be like
I haven't seen anything spiritual like with my physical eyes. What I can say is there was this one time, it was like for a couple weeks, I had a Marine who came back from leave. So he was vacationing in like Mexico or something like that. And he came back with a shrunken human skull. Like he bought it as like a knickknack slash gag gift type thing. Like, you know, hey roommate, check it out. I got a human skull shrunken and attached our like arms and legs, but it's made out of chicken bones. And
Weird.
there was a lot of weird stuff that happened after that. Like the roommate claimed that the skull kept, or like the little mini skeleton kept walking around in the middle of the night when he couldn't move. And every time like they set it away in a drawer or something like that, it would like say they'd put it down face down, and they'd open the drawer and it'd be face up. Weird stuff like that.
And
So
so,
they,
oh, I was
well,
gonna say, do
this
you think
is,
that's the work of a ghost or a demon in that sense?
I think this is probably the work of a demon, but that's speculation. I mean, there is a spiritual realm and there are things that we should not do, such as commune with the dead, which is something that is possible as according to the Bible, right? But it doesn't mean that we should be doing it. And then there are examples of actual demons being like possessing people and things. So when we had that like weird instance, I told those Marines, because they reported to me. I said, you guys should probably get rid of this thing. And they were like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. And so they threw it in the dumpster. And a couple days later, I am walking around the barracks and I smell a weird smell, kind of like sulfur. And I look in a bush where I like smell it coming from, and the little shrunken human skull and the chicken bones, like the skeleton thing, is in the bush.
Oh,
And so I go knock on their door and I'm like, hey guys, what the heck? I told you guys to get rid of this. Like, it's causing you to not sleep. You need to, actually get rid of it. And they said that they tossed it in the dumpster. And I said, well, it's in the bush right now. So you guys need to actually take care of it. So then they, one of the Marines, he broke the legs, the leg bones, the little chicken leg bones that were attached to it.
okay.
Put it back in the dumpster again. But then the next day, it came back to them again and was sitting outside of their door. So at that point, they said, I think we need to burn this thing. So they had a campfire and they tossed it in the fire, and they said it smelt like raw flesh burning. I wasn't there for the actual burning of it. But like that is just one situation out of, however many weird supernatural occurrences have occurred around each of us at least once in our lifetime. Like the supernatural is real. It's just about like how you perceive it. And I think, having a Christian background is actually really easy for me to recognize that, evil exists, and we've been placed on this earth to do something for a reason.
No, I agree with you. That's really, I think having a Christian background does help explain a lot of these situations that occur. One thing I'm wondering, do you ever have these experiences and come from it from a skeptical point of view of wondering, oh, this is someone either trying to mess with me, or even like, say, like any of the famous situations, like let's use the example of Ed and Lorraine Warren and the Amityville Horror House. People came back and said, no, that was actually all a hoax. They didn't really do anything. There was nothing actually going on. So do you think that people actually try to lie about these types of situations occurring to them?
I think sometimes reality is hard to perceive, and that's why people say reality is perception, or perception is reality, rather, because what you perceive, that's all that you can really claim to be true, because outside of that, like what is truth? But that's a little postmodern for my taste. And I think that when you really boil it down, there are laws and there is a natural order in this world, and we see things break those laws and natural orders all the time. It's just a matter of keeping your eyes open.
So, as we're going to wrap up this Pester the Guest episode with the Ed to my Lorraine, we're going to use a quote by Ed Warren himself.
Diabolical forces are formidable. These forces are eternal, and they exist today. The fairy tale is true. The devil exists. God exists. And for us, as people, our very destiny hinges upon which one we elect to follow.
So,
Amen.
on that note, just a reminder to everyone to check out our giveaway linked in the description below. The more platforms that you follow, the more points that you'll get. And we hope that you enjoyed this very real and down-to-earth interview with Joshua today, and stay tuned for our next episode, The Conjuring RPG Edition.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming, Josh.